Hello, welcome to the Lead, Convert, Retain chat this week. I'm joined, as usual, by my good friends Keith Small and John Preston. Keith from Your Success, John from Baseline Digital Marketing, and I'm Guy Griffiths from GG Fit. We have these conversations. We have these conversations all the time, guys, right?
Sure.
But every now and then, every week or two, we record one because what we want to do is to help the fitness, leisure, hospitality industry to grow and to kind of share ideas and a little bit of education. So we think it's worthwhile putting these chats out there. And it is because we've actually got a couple of comments back. Thank you for those of you who have watched previous, either the 1-minute clips we do or the full episodes. But someone has been asking us, what would we do if we took over your gym tomorrow? Now, we don't particularly want to take over anyone's gym, but it's a good question, and it's a question actually we've been chatting about it. We individually get quite a lot. Where do you start is a nice way of putting it. If you were to invoke or ask one of us or two of us or all three of us to come in and help boost your member numbers, what's a good starting point, or what kind of things would we do? So I've got a couple of ideas as always, but I'm going to go last, I think, because retention probably comes a bit further down the line. Let's lead in with Mr. Lead of the Lead, Convert, Retain. John, how would you start on a typical project or engagement?
Yeah, so I think the misconception is that you'll just go straight in and let's start generating some leads. Whereas actually what you need to do is take a step back and have a look where you're at now, really understand what you've got before you can actually start formulating, well, what's the process? So realistically, the certain things that I would want to have a look at is, well, let's take a look at the facility and let's presume that all the branding doesn't need doing and this is purely a marketing exercise. So the facility itself, what are the different areas? What are the features of this gym that we're working with? And then look at who is using each of these different areas. So whether it's the classes or the pool, or if you've got a kind of biocircuit or e-gym type thing, they're going to be very different demographics that are using each area of the gym, and spend some time talking to those people and understanding why they're there and what problems it's solving, and actually asking those questions, because when it comes to actually delivering the marketing, that's the language that they're going to use to attract those sort of people. And then speaking to the sales teams and the business itself and saying, well, what are the demographics within the club, and actually where is it that we need to improve? There's no point trying to put strategies in place which are going to bring people in to use the gym in the evenings, which is absolutely hammered, when actually the area where they want to improve is the off-peak times. So really understanding from the business what that sort of looks like. And then a really, really important one, which is ties very much in with, Guy, yourself, the retention side of it. So something which is vital for me, and especially when we're talking about paid campaigns, is knowing my numbers. And I've talked about this previously. I need to know what the average lifetime value of a customer is. And one is so that I'm going to know that any investment or spend that we put in, what the return of that is. And then obviously it's really, really important. It's going to be a lot easier to improve the retention than it is to bring some new people in. So, if you can increase that retention amount, then actually I've got more money to play with on the front end. So those are the sort of questions I would start by looking at. And even Keith will identify with this, that any real powerful sales process is all about questioning. So I'll go through that full audit, that questioning of the staff, of the customers, of the facility, and understanding the features and benefits. And then from that point, you can actually create your strategy. So you're really very, very targeted to the demographics we want to speak to, the language we want, type of person we want, where they are digitally, what the pain points are, and then really talk about how we're solving that. So that would be the very first steps. You're going to spend a few days really just deeply understanding, where are we, where do we want to be, and how are we going to get there?
Yeah, I love that. Just Just before you jump in, I'd love that start with the members. I see so many clubs with an idea of what they want, or possibly the gaps they want to fill, which are maybe the less popular parts of the club.
Yeah.
But that's going to be really hard to sell. But talking to the members and understanding the personas means that you get the right language, and ultimately you're going to sell more of what's working. Because if something's going well, let's do more of that. Not necessarily at the busy evening time. Okay, take that into account. But talking to members about what they're getting, if you want to get more members in the daytime, talk to the people who are there in the daytime.
Yeah.
Because your campaign is going to go so much better.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you're selling. It's never about you or your product.
No. Or actually, I mean, the facility is important, and being on site is really important, and seeing what's there and seeing the branding.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more what's in there specifically. The members.
And understanding where you've got the space. So going in there and just sort of hyping up all the classes when they're all completely full, and if you join, you're never going to get in one. Not going to work, is it? No,
but that does lead nicely on to Keith. So sorry I interrupted, Keith.
No, it's absolutely brilliant, because the bit, it sounds like I'm a bit repetitive here, but information and numbers are going to be everything. But the bit that ties in with John, because John and I did a project a little while ago, and we had this conversation about personas, messages going out, what's going to be communicated, so that when inquiries were coming in, the people that were handling know not just what is when it's going out, but what the messages are. We can kind of anticipate a certain type of question, a particular type of customer. So there's a strong possibility then of being able to not just be prepared, but also understand who you're going to be looking after. Because maybe you change the way you interact or work with them. So you're still yourself, you still deliver great personality. But what you're doing is you're actually thinking, well, here's the people we're marketing to. Here's how I'm going to help them. So you kind of got some preparation ready, and you can gear yourself up to deal with that. But then the bit that strikes me very often is when people want to increase their membership numbers. It's like very often I get told, we need more members. Okay, great. What figures are we talking about here? So where are you and where do you need to get to? Because obviously some of that's going to be a balance of people we're helping to join up, but then working with you guys, how many of those are we able to retain to get that membership base to where it needs to be? One of the things I always like to spend some time looking at with people is, right, okay, so how many members do you generally sign up in a month? Where do they come from? So it ties in with source. So we can start to look at activity from site. But before that, I'm also trying to find out, what is your inquiry process? So if we do John does a phenomenal job pulling together kind of like the leads, what happens? Who deals with that inquiry? If it's a phone call, what's the online inquiry dealt with like? So we're looking at how we are able to convert those inquiries into people coming through the door and how we look after them. So how's that process looking? And when people come in, what's the process? How do we understand what they're looking for? How do we build our tours of the building and the facilities around those customers' needs? And also when we're presenting information and pricing, what access do we have to it? And in the nicest possible way, if we have a process, do the staff understand how it works, how it benefits them, and the part they play in all of it? Because often, like John referenced membership teams, sometimes it's going to be organizations where the receptionist or the gym team or the duty manager are the ones dealing with the inquiries. So there needs to be an understanding across the board of the role they play and how they all interact with this. So understanding those processes is vital. So you can look at where things are great, where we can tighten up, but also what's possible. Because certain levels of teams or people at certain hours mean that maybe we deliver a process, but it has to be adjusted on certain occasions. But it's just understanding that. Mm-hmm. But then really importantly, the thing for me to look for is then once we're delivering that process, how good are we right now? So if somebody walks in through the door, how likely are they to join? If 10 people come in through the door and have a look around, how many join? So we can start to look at where we can see improvement and where we're making adjustments, where that lift makes a difference. Because very often, as I've experienced, brilliant in terms of seeing people coming in through the door, but the people joining afterwards aren't necessarily hitting the heights they need to. And sometimes it can be down to facilities not matching people's needs, which comes down to the marketing we're delivering. But very often it's maybe we're missing vital information. We're not making that person feel as comfortable, as welcome as they could do. So let's look at tightening things up so our strategy is good. And then we can look at where we've seen improvement when's the next lift coming, and you can start to build a confidence in the team in terms of here's where you started, here's where you are, just by adjusting these questions or doing these 2 or 3 simple things. But then it's all
got a question, Keith, with regards to this, because obviously we've worked together on several sites, and we've even worked together with the sort of sales process, the actual selling of memberships. How would you go about, so say you go into a club which does have a membership team, obviously sort of identifying strengths and weaknesses within that team and going about upskilling the team where required. How would you go about doing that?
Generally speaking, the kind of questions I'd look for is first of all, right, so we talked about process, but then if you do have prospects and information you're taking on these individuals, how do you capture it? What do you do with it? What's your process for following it up? So we can kind of see where there's adjustments that need to be there. I also then ask if people take me through their process and perhaps take me on a tour. And I know it puts them under a little bit of different pressure, but I just get an idea of, are they asking questions? Are they telling me what I'm already seeing? Or are they actually talking to me to understand who I am, what I'm looking for, to match the appropriate service and facility to what I want to achieve and to me? And you can very often make some subtle changes to that process and see big lifts in terms of numbers. So a lot of it comes down to conversation and really understanding the team, what they do well, but also sometimes asking, what do you feel is not happening for you? What is stopping people joining, or what is not allowing you to be as successful as you could be? Because sometimes it's great picking up things, but sometimes it can be a subtle thing where someone says, you know, I just don't feel confident asking about prices. I just don't like inviting people over. I feel like I'm being pushy. So we look at how it actually mirrors service delivery rather than feeling like, this is a bit I get a lot, I don't want to feel like a salesperson. And the bit that I very often discover is they're brilliant when they're asked to talk to someone about swimming lessons. So what's the difference with membership? And it's that whole thought process about service delivery. And it's those very subtle switches that make the difference in terms of what I'm delivering is great service. And if somebody likes the sound of what I'm talking about and it matches their needs, then the next step for them to get well and improve and get healthier is for me to invite them to start, not me herding them into a corner, forcing them with, you know, an iPad or a contract of some sort that makes them join. It's like, if it feels right to that person, then the next step is for them to join, and you have the impact on that, making someone feel comfortable and welcome. And that's what it's about. So it's understanding where the team see their strengths, looking at how I see that in terms of what's showing on paper, in terms of, do they know how many people come in? Are they tracking their activity? Because again, if people aren't looking at that information, then for me, potentially there's an issue because they don't know how good they are or how much work they need to do to change things around. But then the final bit of it, basically, which fits in for me, is if you are inviting people to join and they are doing so, what does your referral program look like? Because that's going to be your stage in terms of, number one, rewarding the person that's introduced you, but number two, encouraging you to invite more like-minded friends and family members who are likely to elevate the number of visits, help you stay longer, which is going to hand over to Guy. But if we're not using a referral strategy in the right way, we could be missing some great opportunities, because happy, exercising, regular customers are going to be the best source for you in terms of bringing in your next batch of joiners and making that club feeling like a club or facility feeling like a community, which is the retention side of things. So that's kind of like the work that I would look at. And, you know, we could talk about pricing and things like, is the pricing right? How does it fit within the market? There's areas that you'd look at there as well. But the first thing for me is, let's look at what's being delivered by people. And if people are the area, if it's not a level of improvement, is our pricing strategy correct? Are there things that we could do to adjust that fits into the marketplace, but also delivers what we need in terms of results? So, you know, that's also an area to look at, but people first, in my opinion, anyway. So,
perfect. Which I think throws back to, yes, it kind of throws to me, but it does also throw back to the last 2 or 3 of these that we talked about people.
I think so.
And about conversations and about referrals. So, yeah, those are avenues we've already explored, which is, I mean, just a nice circular thing. I mean, just for me, I would echo everything that you guys have both said. Absolutely start with the numbers. We rarely go in on a retention project without doing some kind of analysis of the database, or at least knowing length of membership, because otherwise you go in, we deliver some training, or we deliver some strategy, or we build some journeys or whatever else. we want to know 6 months later how much that has improved. And we want to show the difference, to show the ROI. So it's really important to have those numbers, whether it is 12-month retention or a monthly attrition or a length of stay versus length of pay, which is often different. How long people pay for is often another 2 or 3 months longer than how long they actually stay for. It's no good trying to get people back after they've finished paying. You're much better off trying to get them when they stop or as they stop visiting. But so joined up approach, and by joined up I mean both across marketing and sales and retention, but also you've got to have a joined up approach within, amongst your people, amongst your team. You've got to have the GM on the same page as the receptionist, on the same page as the fitness instructors, and talking about their why, which is kind of what you're saying there, Keith, I think, and what is everyone's purpose and what is the purpose of the facility? How well are people doing in different areas through some of those KPIs, not loads and loads of numbers, but knowing a few things that you're trying to do to build on that will affect retention. And I've got a couple of more controversial ideas of things that I would do if I was taking over a club, which I'll get onto. But generally, what's going well, we work with a lot of multi-site operators, and that's great to see one site absolutely smashing it in certain areas and going, look, what are these guys doing differently? Maybe let's get the GM from there into this site, or maybe do a little exchange so that you can see things working differently and how you need to get that. Ultimately, it's people and it's culture and it's all that kind of thing. Taking that forward from a staff member point of view, and we've chatted about it a couple of times here and I talk about it a lot, making sure that all your team have had a body composition measurement or a health check or an induction. You've really got to get everyone to experience that. If they're going to sell it and they do although we're not necessarily talking about a financial amount, but as someone's joining, we want to promote inductions or activation sessions as much as possible. They need to have experienced that. So I would want all staff, I would mandate it as much as you can. You can't mandate everyone to have done an induction, but they all should have experienced one. They should all have ideally done some kind of fitness class. And I'd take that into, if I was running a gym, I would say every new member has to have had that first session, has to have had a class, has to have had a program. And at the end of month one, if Keith hadn't ticked all the boxes, I'd say, sorry, Keith, membership here isn't for you because you've not done all the things that we expect of our members in their first month. I'm being slightly tongue-in-cheek, but from taking over a club, getting everyone to do the first 3 or the first 5 things that is going to set them on that journey. And it's not just an induction, but getting them to tick those boxes on the 0 to hero card would mean your retention would be so much better.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get everyone to do it, but there would be a different culture and a different level of engagement in your club. So I've gone yes, numbers, yes, people, yes, programming, strategy, knowing that there is a journey, but trying to get as many people onto that as possible by hook or by crook would be the way. A couple of wry smiles there. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Go on, John.
Say again, John.
Oh, sorry, go on, John. We're interrupting each other. John, please.
It sounds like quite the regime of guy's new gym.
The bit I like about it, and this is the thing, this is the tongue-in-cheek bit, but goals and targets for me are everything. So we talked about numbers in terms of where people are, where they'd like to get to, and there's obviously going to be a combination between the 3 things that we do. But when you're tracking results on marketing, you can see in return. But then if you're trying to have a certain amount of members come through your doors, then over the period of a year, you've got to break your goal down, certainly in the sales point of view and the membership point of view, for new joiners, into targets around what you need to achieve each month to hit that year's goal. But importantly, taking in peaks and troughs in the year. When is the club successful? When do we see slightly quieter times? And there are industry norms, but there can sometimes be subtle differences from facility to facility and club to club. And you'd have to put those goals in place so you can measure how well you're doing, so you can praise the team or give them more to work towards. I'd imagine, and you'll tell me right or wrong, Guy, the same for retention. We see this many people stay for this length of time, but the goal to be able to hit your membership-based number is to hang on to an extra percentage of those, which looks like this. So now your membership numbers are coming up in terms of joiners and your retention levels are coming up here. So now that membership-based number you're talking about going from this number to here it's now being achieved through a combination of all the things and not just filling one end and watching the other end leak. I mean, is for me the importance of what you said about goals and targets and rewarding.
Absolutely. There's members' goals, but having staff goals and having targets for them, and we've measured it a lot of time, not the full, you've got to do a task, you've got to do 0 to hero. But if people have had an activation session, we know that the people who've had that stay 3 months longer.
Yeah.
And then playing that back to the staff in the club and saying, look, we don't charge anything for an activation, but we want to encourage as many people as possible, because on a £35 a month average yield, if you let John join tomorrow and go, oh, your experience, you probably don't need an activation, you've probably just dropped £100. You have lost the business £100, because John, on average, if he's not had one, he's probably going to stay 3 months less. So understand that. And that is why we have set a target of having half of the people who join over the next month to have booked that appointment. And then you play that back and go, now look, these people have made 8 first month visits as opposed to 5. And people can understand that. Understanding 12-month retention and the curve and stuff like that is hard, but getting everyone in the club, and that comes back to this, that everyone needs to be behind it and understand why we are pushing, if it's an activation or a health check or getting people into a class in their first month. This is the result. People will stay longer, will make more money for the business. And I mean, what is our why? It varies from business to business and from person to person, but ultimately we want to get people fitter and healthier. If having an activation gives us more chance of doing that, then that's the goal. That's why we're aiming for whatever it is. At the moment, it's 20%. We're trying to get to 50. So this month, we're trying to get to 30, say.
Yeah. It's certainly that retention number. And if you're saying putting an extra 3 months on, which is an extra £100, I don't know, from the kind of customer facing side, it's very much the goal is we want people in, we want them active, getting fitter, enjoying the facility, enjoying the community. From our point of view, when you're sort of going in and talking to directors and accountants, though, that extra £100 is very, very important, because it's sort of justifies the spend on the front end. Yeah. It's a big, big thing, and people don't realise that. And when I've been talking to sales managers and they've gone, well, I've just had a quote for, I don't know, £1,000 for some sort of advertising or digital advertising somewhere. It seems like a lot of money. Well, what's one customer worth? £2,000. So in 12 months, you only need to convert one person off that and you've doubled your money. Now, does it seem like a lot of money?
It's an interesting conversation, because and this was a little while ago. This was a site, multiple sites. I think it was 7 or 8 sites. Anyway, the point of it was we were having a conversation with the owners, and they said, well, what can you give us? I said, well, with the work that we do, it'll be at least 1 additional membership per day. And they laughed at me. Said, well, that's not worth the investment. I said, well, hang on. How many days in a month? How many days in a year? What's your membership worth over a period of 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is? And I said, okay, great. So let's add that figure together. Now times it by your 8 facilities. How much is that worth? And I said, there you go. That's my training cost versus your return. Yeah. That's so bleak. Yeah. The importance of 1 extra person a day is incredible. And I think people look for the big immediate win, when very often here's the win, the steady wins that we can do over a period of time. 1 a day looks like this. And that's the thing. Maybe it'll be 2 a day, but certainly seeing those gentle increments which become sustainable for your team to actually put in place and manage is magic, but it's just sounds like get people to look at that final number.
So let's pick. So to wrap up, because we all aim for 15 minutes, we're at 25. There might be a little bit of an edit, but I don't think so. There's lots of gold dust in here. I hope you like it. But if you were to go into a reasonably successful club tomorrow, and you had to, and we found out all the numbers and the things. Let's just go, average Joe, average customer. What would be one thing you would recommend? And while you both think about it a little bit, or maybe because I might be stealing your thunder, I'll go first. I would go with what I'm working on and doing at the moment. I would say the one thing I would do to help boost member numbers would be health checks. I would go with some kind of body composition or some kind of hub from a German or Italian company but I would get health checks going, not just with members, but with non-members. That would be my kind of one go-to tip. Keith, have you got a
There's many,
one
but I'm
quick
going
win?
one, if that's okay. And that would be working with the team, reviewing and improving your inquiry process, so you know it's as good and as sharp as it can
Nice.
be to benefit the work that John would be doing.
Okay, which possibly is still stolen John's. I don't know.
No, I think if I'm only allowed to do one thing, I would have to go in and find the gap, find the hole
Nice.
we need to plug. Who is it we need to find? So that will be the starting point. Is it off-peak members? Is it classes? Is it? That's where I go.
Yeah, perfect. A good finish. Okay, guys, thank you. Always good to chew the fat and really good to edit from time to time. If you're watching this and you've got questions or you agree with any of the points, or even better, if you disagree with any of the points, drop a comment below wherever you're watching. We will get back to you or start a bit of a debate, because that kind of thing is always good for helping people share and education and all that as well. John, Keith, pleasure as always. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Good to see you.